This magic moment.
Now, this magic moment.
Three-point shot. Back in. The bank open.
Orlando rises.
Bain hoisting at the buzzer. He drills it.
Legends live.
It's a crack down.
And the magic is real.
He's going to go for the win. Shot is up and he got it.
Strap in. It's showtime with RJ Saunders.
It is this magic moment here on 1010XL Magic. RJ Saunders here with you. As always, we do appreciate you guys being along for the ride here with us. And I think everybody can take a huge sigh of relief, a lot closer than what we would have liked for it to be. Nevertheless, the 6-game losing streak is over. A win is a win is a win is a win. And the Magic find themselves back in the win column after defeating the Sacramento Kings by a final score of 121-117. Their attention now turns to the Toronto Raptors in Canada. That game will be on Sunday. If you are new to the channel, we do welcome you and appreciate you giving us a couple moments of your time. Also, if you can like and subscribe to the channel, we would really appreciate it as we continue following this team with 9 games left to go in the regular season. Then we'll be in postseason play. But all right, let's talk about this Orlando Magic group and what the focus needs to be in their final 9 games here in the regular season, because this is a young team who I feel has shown who they are, at least with this collection, this rendition of players that they have been allotted. A lot of injuries this season, but I do believe that this team does have the potential to give us a little bit of a taste in these final 9 games should Anthony Black and Franz Wagner come back before postseason play, of what they can potentially be going into their first round playoff series, maybe even beyond, but certainly going into next season if everything is everything and they do have a clean bill of health. We have been asking for that over the last couple of seasons. Hasn't happened. Maybe we'll have a string of luck going into the final stretch of this year, going into the tournament, and especially during next season for a full 82 games. If you are the Orlando Magic, in my opinion, I think the focus would have to be pretty simple. It's not going to be easy, but for me, I think it's about sharpening your identity, although this season that's been rather inconsistent for this team. I would say they've had probably more of an identity crisis than understanding what their identity is in its full totality. You're going to have to tighten your execution, and you're going to have to prove that your brand of basketball is going to translate as the pressure begins to tick up. And let's face it, there is immense pressure for this Orlando Magic team if they do want to get the 6 seed, potentially the 5, before everything is said and done for the regular season. So let's start with the biggest thing, in my opinion. That's going to be offensive consistency. But before I get into why that is going to be so major, Paolo Banchero talked to Dante Marchitelli following the win against Sacramento, talked about his 30-point outing. This is his 3rd straight game with 30-plus points for the Orlando Magic, and just offensively what he has enjoyed from this group in the last few games in which they have had.
Got 3 straight games over 30. I know you're always aggressive, but you're seeing different defenses every night. How did you attack this one here tonight?
Just being aggressive early, getting downhill, taking what they gave me, and, just keeping them on their toes, also trying to make plays for my teammates.
What do you like about what you're doing offensively as a group? What this team is doing, you're sharing the basketball. Everyone seems to be getting involved, getting an opportunity. What do you like on that end of the floor?
What you just said, everybody getting involved, guys getting clean open shots, and, just trying to play together on that end. We need to stack some wins together at the end of the season, and it's going to take great offense and great defense.
So when it comes to the offense, and I don't think I'm pointing out anything new to you as an Orlando Magic fan, there have been stretches where this offense has looked absolutely dynamic. And we've seen that in many stretches where the ball is moving. You have guys cutting, Guys are getting downhill, namely Paolo Banchero, as well as Desmond Bain. You'll also see a bit of that with guys such as Anthony Black when he's healthy, Franz Wagner when he's healthy as well. And then they're living in the paint. They're getting a lot of paint points. This is a team that ranks in the top 15 when it comes to paint points, at 44 last night against the Sacramento Kings. I believe they average about 51 per contest, the Orlando Magic do. But there have been droughts with this team, right? Where there are long periods of time where the offense is absolutely stalled. Too much isolation, not enough spacing. Guys are really starting to attack and close the gap on Paolo Banchero, want for somebody else to beat them. Other teams are taking their chances on that. You're getting a lot of tough shots late in the shot clock. And I think most of them have been pretty bad, sometimes in the hands of an individual who probably thought that they weren't going to have the ball in their hands when the shot clock got deep. So I think we talked about it last week that the regression of this team during the 6-game losing streak, at least in my mind, was the fact when you saw during the 7-game winning streak, the ball was able to pop a lot more, and you were putting Paolo Banchero in spots where you thought he was being a lot more efficient in ways. You were putting him in the dunker spot. You were also getting him as close to the basket as possible. There were also a couple of times within the offense that Paolo Banchero would take advantage of a smaller defender by just simply putting him on the block, being able to get into his bag, find those kill spots for him to where he could be a playmaker for himself and others. Really didn't think I was seeing that to the level in which we saw it during the 7-game winning streak in the 6-game losing streak. So that's been a big problem for the Orlando Magic. But I think now the question is going to have to be over these last 9 games for Orlando, can you generate good shots every possession? I feel like that is, hey, a long shot is going to be a far cry if you do not have Anthony Black and you do not have Franz Wagner, but you're hoping once again that you're going to get them before we get to the end of the regular season. But when Paolo Banchero is your first option and he's taken away, what is the team able to do? And we've seen it with guys like Desmond Bain. He's able to create and make his own shots. Can other guys do that as well, where they can knock down the long ball? Javon Carter, Tristan Da Silva, Jamal Cain. I understand he only shot and made the only 3 that he took in that game against the Sacramento Kings, but could he do that at a much more efficient clip? Could you get that from Mo Wagner just a little bit more as your stretch 4, right? You're going to have to make quicker decisions. If you're Orlando, just simple and plain, you're going to have to make quicker decisions. Better off-ball movement is something in which you're going to have, and you're going to have to trust in the system which is in front of you, and that is Jamal Mosley's system. I hear what you guys are saying on Twitter. I see what you guys are saying in comment sections of other Orlando Magic podcasts, this podcast, even during the post-game press conferences that the Orlando Magic post following the games, win or loss. And, there's this great big divide as to whether or not Jamal Mosley needs to be the coach next year or not. Listen, whether the players want it, whether I want it, whether you want it, whether the Magic organization want it, this is the system and this is the scheme in which you are playing in right now with head coach Jamal Mosley. You're going to have to find a way to win with the cards in which you are dealt. And I do believe that this Magic team, we have heard this before, I do believe that they love playing hard for coach Jamal Mosley. It hasn't translated into the wins and the expectations that we had at the beginning of the regular season, but I do think that they do want to make it work. Let the chips fall where they may when it comes to this offseason. But once again, Orlando's going to have to make this work with the scheme and the options in which they have when it comes to Jamal Mosley and his coaching staff. If that changes, then you'll have to find a way to make it work next season. But we can't worry about next season right now, which I think is going to lead into point number 2. And a lot of this is going to have to do with Franz Wagner coming back. When he comes back, we don't know necessarily when that is, but Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner as your decision makers on this team, because that's what they are as your 2 franchise cornerstones. I think that we have gotten good news on the Franz Wagner front from head coach Jamal Mosley when it comes to the future All-Star. He did say yesterday that Franz is able to go through contact, and that he played a little bit and recovered well on Wednesday. Wagner didn't do much on yesterday. They allowed Thursday to be more of a, quote, try to recover from what he did the other day and go from there. Jeff Turner was on 96.9 The Game in Orlando and believes that before this season ends, Franz Wagner will be back on the floor with this group. Here is the Orlando Magic legend.
Well, we don't know anything for sure. The team, really protects the players with, the injury information. What I just go by when I start seeing guys around, right, around the team, and it just feels like they're close. So my feeling is that we will get Franz back before the end of the season. I don't know about AB. I'm hoping Jalen, it's just an illness, and, we can go from there. Hopefully he's not going to be out too long. But, Jake's right. You have to play with what you got.
So if that is to happen, and you do have Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, and Desmond Bane back on the floor together, because still we don't know about Anthony Black. Jamal Mosley did say that Anthony Black is on the floor doing a lot of no contact. He is getting some light shooting in, just not a lot of movement as he's continuing to heal from that left abdominal strain. But these final 9 games, they can't be about scoring anymore, solely about scoring. I understand that's how you win games. Offense does win games here. And we know that this Orlando Magic team can score. They're averaging about 115 points per contest, and they have a great record when they score 120 plus points a game. That's a franchise record. They've done it over 20 times this season. But the question is going to be now, especially when you get back Franz Wagner and Anthony Black, are you able to control a game? Are you able to do that? Can you read the help defense? Can you make the skip pass? Can the cutter get to the spot in which they're able to get to where you're able to drop that dime and punish teams for overloading a side, or really trying to focus all their attention on Paolo, or all their attention on Franz, or all their attention on Desmond Bane? Because once you get into the playoffs, and I believe that we have learned this, or even if you get into the play-in, however this Orlando Magic team falls when it's all said and done at the end of the year, that's what defenses are going to do. They're going to want to see, or going to try to challenge you into playing their pace. You're going to have to dictate how you guys control tempo. That's going to be something I'm going to be looking for in these final 9 games. They're going to crowd the paint, as we talked about, with Paolo Banchero, especially what he's been able to do over these last 3 games. He's had 2 30-point games and a 39-point game. He's been on an absolute tear. And I think that for all the Paolo haters that are on there, Twitter, and talking about Paolo Banchero, they've been really, really quiet over these last few games in which we have seen Paolo Banchero talking about, quote unquote, he's not the guy. I think that you're able to see that this guy can be a franchise piece for you. He just needs a little bit of help, and hopefully that help is going to be coming within the next few days. So can your stars, such as Paolo, such as Franz, can they elevate the guys around them? And I think that's probably going to be a big ask, but I think that you're going to have guys here that are going to be able to answer that call. Now, is it going to be consistent? That's going to be the question in which we're going to have. But I do believe that they're going to be open to that challenge, because also this is going to be, for me, just how together is this team. I think that we heard Desmond Bane say it a few games ago that, listen, we just have to be more together as a team, especially during the time in which they had during the losing streak. And I think they're going to have to be even more together now as we get to the final portion of the regular season. But let's flip to the other side of the ball here, because that's where Orlando really says they pound the table on their identity, and that's the defensive end. This team has been physical. They've been long. They've been disruptive. They force turnovers. A much better team when their defense is dictating what they do on offense and creating their offense, that's when they're locked in. And that's when they're a nightmare matchup for anybody in which they come in front of, right? Because over these last 9 games, discipline is going to probably be the subject and the focal point for this Orlando Magic group. You can't have unnecessary fouls. You're going to have to play defense without fouling. You can't have any blown assignments. You cannot lose shooters in transition. Great defensive teams do not just play hard. Great defensive teams also do play smart. They are going to communicate. They do rotate on time, right? They also do not beat themselves. So if you are the Orlando Magic, you're probably asking yourself, can we be elite defensively night after night after night? And you're going to have to take it one game at a time. But in a 9-game sample size, that's something in which we're going to have to see, because I don't look at the schedule as murderer's row, but you do have to take care of your business if you are this young ball club. But here's going to be another big focus. You're going to have to close games. You were able to do that last night against the Sacramento Kings. Here was Jamal Mosley talking about just how proud he was of the team for closing it out, especially when the game was tied at 95 and it could have gone either way.
Finding a way. I think that's what it comes down to, finding a way. And these guys did that. He said 95. We made a little push, got ourselves going. Obviously, they came back and hit a couple of big shots. But our ability just to find a way down the stretch, whether that's moving and sharing the basketball, finding the option for Dez and P in the pick and roll, coming down, guarding them, trying to take out the three. Those are important pieces. But to your point, finding a way to win the game down the stretch.
That's where young teams normally stumble. Right, closing out those games. And this season, we have seen the Orlando Magic stumble, right? Most notably against teams like the Lakers, where you were up, I think, with, in the final 2 minutes of the game, Luke Kennard hits that game-winning 3. You thought that you were going to come in against the Indiana Pacers and they would just roll over because they're trying to keep a first-round pick. Those guys on the floor were trying to win that ball game. They ultimately do, even with the run that you had made late in that contest. Closing games is something in which the Orlando Magic are going to have to hang their hat on, especially when it comes to late in contests. You can't just play a great 44 or 46 minutes of the game when an NBA contest is 48 minutes. Those last 2 minutes, those last 4 minutes matter if you want to have a win at the final horn, right? So execution late in games. Who's initiating that offense? Who's making shots? Where are the shots coming from? How are you defending without fouling like we talked about? That's going to be important all the way around. So Orlando needs to treat every close game like a game 7, because that's the mode in which I have said for weeks now you're getting into. Every single game's a game 7. These last 9, let's see how they are able to conduct themselves in those game 7 close matchups, right? You're going to have to value each possession. Mentally, you're going to have to be there. You cannot allow yourself to get distracted or look any other way. This is about the Magic. This is going to be about who you have in that locker room. It's about you guys. Forget everybody else on the outside, right? You're going to have to figure out who are your go-to guys with each possession, which I'm sure is going to be your core guys of Desmond Bane, Franz Wagner, as well as Paolo Banchero. But also, I do believe now you're going to have to talk about what actions are you running? What's your counter if the first option does get blown up? All of these things, unfairly to the Magic, you're going to have to learn on the fly because you haven't had your full allotment of players the entire season. This is going to be the opportunity in the final 9 if Franz is to come back within it, and also Anthony Black able to come back within it, to where you're going to be able to see during even Franz's ramp-up process what you guys are able to do, right? So you don't want to be figuring that out. The reason why I say it is because you don't want to be figuring that out in game 1 of a playoff series. I don't care who you play, whether it's Detroit, especially Boston. If you face New York and you get the 6, or you face Cleveland and get the 5, you don't want to be figuring it out then. You have 9 games, and hopefully Franz is able to come back by then to where you're able to figure that out now. And that's something that Desmond Bane had talked about when it comes to the team wanting to play better in his post-game interview after the win against the Sacramento Kings.
Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of relief, but I think this group's just very hungry to play better. We understand that, yeah, we won, but we had to play better basketball if we want to do what we want to do down this stretch. So just conversations in there on how we can improve on both ends of the floor. To help us in Toronto, go get one in Toronto.
Now, let's talk about the role players because this is going to be huge in my opinion. Um, Contending or even dangerous teams, in my opinion, always have guys who know exactly what they're bringing every single night, whether that's shooting, defensive intensity, energy, rebounding, whatever it is, it has to be consistent. So for Orlando in these final games, who are the 8 or 9 guys you are going to be trusting? Who can you rely on in a very big moment? Who is going to be your closing lineup? And I would like to think that Jamal Mosley and company are figuring that out more so now if they know, just the timeline in which Franz and Anthony Black and Jonathan Isaac are going to be coming back and returning to this group. That lineup is going to shrink in terms of your rotation. You're probably going to be relying on your best 8, maybe your best 9. And I throw out 9 because Jamal Cain has been doing rather well in the opportunities in which he's gotten since signing that standard contract. Jamal Mosley and the team, very proud of him and what he's been able to do as an addition on the floor, especially on the defensive side of the basketball. But who fits next to, let's throw him in there, Anthony Black, Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, Desmond Bain. I understand that we did see that death lineup against the Milwaukee Bucks. Are you saying that is going to be your 5 alongside Jalen Suggs, or do you want to try some different things and try to go towards a different angle because you haven't been able to see that enough due to the fact that you've had injuries? So that's going to be one big question in which we are going to have to figure out, right? Tristan da Silva, he's shown flashes that he can do great things in big time situations. Because I believe with Franz and Black out, I think they've been looking at this guy and saying, hey, you need now to be the guy. We're placing you in these situations. Fair or unfair to him because he's been in and out of the lineup a lot, right? And maybe he'll be more comfortable in the position they put him in once we see a more healthy team. Javon Carter, that's a guy who's always been aggressive. It seems like he's always trying to create his own shot. He's also knocking down his outside shots when he's open for this team. And that's been a breath of fresh air. I understand, Tyus Jones didn't work out the way in which you wanted to, but you do have a guy in Javon Carter who seems to be the answer to that problem in which you've had in terms of knocking down threes from the outside, especially with your second unit. Mo, it seems like he's still trying to play his way back through that injury. He's been able to give you some sort of, flashes himself to where he's been able to give you that great energy. But it hasn't been, in my opinion, what we saw over the last couple of seasons. And I understand that the injury does have a big part to play in that. A lot of what we're talking about now probably wouldn't be an issue if this team was 100% and this team was healthy. But Orlando, once again, you have to win with the cards in which you have been dealt. So if Franz is able to return, I think that gives everyone in that locker room a high sense of relief. But you're going to need, as Shaq always likes to call them, you're going to need those others to be able to step up in big moments, because I think that's going to be the positive or the negative as to why you win or lose a playoff series. Finally, it's going to be your mentality. That's going to be the shift. I mean, everybody looks at you as the fun team, the young up and coming team. But now you have to say, listen, we have to be a team that a lot of people expected to win. Hell, you had Zach Lowe just a couple of weeks ago saying that you guys may be a dark horse in the Eastern Conference. I understand that's when you were the 5 seed, but I think that can still be true if you do get healthy. And let's just say you get the 6 or you get the 5 by the time we get to the end of the playoff chase and you're facing the New York Knicks or you're facing the Cleveland Cavaliers, it's also possible that you could be facing Detroit or Boston. But I do believe that neither of those teams can sleep on you if you are able to put a good run together in these final stretch of games. So this isn't just about, in my opinion, improving your seeding. I do know that probably for matchup purposes, you're saying that, listen, we would rather be here than here. But, you know, this also can't just be about making the playoffs simply, right? This has to be about setting the tone. You have to be playing with a sense of urgency. You have to play with an edge. You have to treat every possession like it matters, because soon, in about 9 games, every possession will matter if it doesn't right now. So to boil it all down, offensive consistency, star playmaking, defensive discipline, late game execution, role definition, and a playoff level mindset. Orlando checks those boxes. They're not just a nice story, and they're not just crawling their way into the playoffs, but I do think that they could potentially be a problem, and that's exactly where you want to be heading into April. Those are just my thoughts. I would love to hear yours. Let us know in the comment section what should be the big focus for the Orlando Magic going into the final 9 games of the season. We would love to hear from you here on this Magic Moment. Dante Marchitelli, Orlando Magic analyst, as well as sideline reporter, also the host of Magic Insiders on 96.9 The Game with Jake Chapman, does join us here today on this episode of this Magic Moment. Want to ask him about how big of a sigh of relief is it for guys like him and also for the team to now get off of that 6-game losing skid, get the win against Sacramento. Can you put a run together here before we get to the postseason? And also, does he want to take a victory lap on the comments that he made about Paolo Banchero just a few short weeks ago? So without further ado, let's welcome in Dante Marchitelli. Quite simply, I call our next guest the Orlando Magic Mr. Rogers, because he lets everyone who is an Orlando Magic fan feel like he is their neighbor. The way I'm able to see this guy interact with fans and people just across the great city of Orlando, I think that we can learn a little bit of just everything from our guest here. And I'm always honored and appreciative that he gives us a little bit of time here on this Magic Moment. He is Dante Marchitelli, fresh off of the win versus the Sacramento Kings. Dante, it's always a pleasure and honor. You know, I think the world of you, sir. How are you?
Well, RJ, I can't thank you enough for that introduction. That means a lot. You're the same way, man. I think there's an authentic, I think there's an authentic nature to you, and I think that's important for us in this industry to be that way. And I love the fans that we see in the building. I love talking with all of our partners around the state of Florida. Obviously, 1010XL, a great one for us. So we're honored and we're privileged to be able to talk Magic basketball together. It's a lot of fun.
Absolutely. And the pleasure is always ours, sir, having you guys on and you guys giving us this opportunity. So Jamal Mosley says after the game last night against the Sacramento Kings that, listen, hey, it wasn't the prettiest win, right, but the important thing is that we got it. You did a great post-game interview with Paolo Banchero. He says it wasn't the prettiest win. It was a lot closer than we would have liked, but the important thing is that the 6-game losing streak is over. We can focus on trying to get a couple of games here under our belt before we get to the NBA postseason. Just what were your takeaways against the Sacramento Kings in a much needed win by the Orlando Magic?
Yeah, I think he's right. I think Jamal's right. I think Paolo's right. I think it wasn't pretty, but I think they know that. And I think that at this stage of the game, you just have to get a win any way you can get it. And you got to scratch and claw. And that's a game that last week maybe they lose. Right, Indiana came in here and beat you. They had the worst record in the NBA, and they beat you. And that was frustrating because you nearly beat the Thunder. You should have beat the Lakers. You had a chance to beat the Cavs. Right, you've been in all these clutch games here down the stretch. With that win last night, that's now 24 clutch wins on the season. That's tied for second most in the NBA. Think about that. It's Detroit that has the most, and you're tied with San Antonio. And that's with letting 3 get away in the clutch situation, right? So you're right there. So I think you just everybody could exhale. I think, Nick Anderson said it on the postgame show, and I think it's true. Your body language is completely different. When you're going through a 6-game losing streak and things start to get away from you, it's kind of, here we go again, and the shoulders sag and you kind of hang your head a little bit. But with the win, okay, now we got something. Now we're 2 games out of 5th instead of 2.5. Now we're tied for 8th instead of a solo possession of 10th, right? So I think you're starting to feel good, and now maybe you get some help. Maybe you get maybe the cavalry is coming here in the next couple of games, so you kind of get a shot in the arm that way. You got Jalen Suggs back last night, so that was huge. So at the end of the year, RJ, they're only going to remember the wins and losses. 2 months from now, we're not going to remember at all that we barely squeaked it out against Sacramento. The schedule is going to show a W. So you got it. You found a way to get it. Now you got to be a lot crisper here, the final 9.
Now, I've been trying to figure out how we got to the 6-game losing streak, because it just felt like coming out of the All-Star break, you win 7 in a row. We're talking about the 5th seed, possibly even getting the 4th seed. I believe that you and the people at ESPN before the Cleveland Cavaliers game was just saying by the analytics that may have been the 4 or 5 matchup, meaning that the NBA was thinking that Orlando's going to finish as a top 5 seed, and then it just seems like in the snap of a finger, here we are with the lowest of lows in the 6-game losing streak. You go into the game against Sacramento at the 10th seed, but now here you are in the 8th seed because you own those tiebreakers against Charlotte, and you also own the tiebreaker against the Miami Heat. But if you could kind of put your finger on it, if you've thought about it, just how did we get to the 6-game losing streak?
I thought it was interesting. Paolo Banchero did an interview the other day, and I think it was after the Laker loss, heartbreaking loss, right? Yeah. You have a buzzer beater, near buzzer beater, 0.5 of a second left with Luke Kennard, and he said, when you win 7 in a row, you can't drink the Kool-Aid. You can't sit there and feel yourself and read all the good things and feel like you've arrived. You still have to play that same way going into the 8th game, and you still have to continue that. And then when you get in a 6-game losing streak, at that time it was 4. You can't think, okay, the world is over, right? You got to find a way, and he does that. Amazing, 23 years old to have the poise that he has. Yeah. So I think that was part of it. I think maybe you're feeling, okay, we've got something, we've got it figured out. You're playing Indiana, worst team in the NBA. We could probably just show up and roll over these guys. That's not the case. We're not built like that, right? So we got to play hard no matter what. And the other thing is, they just seem to have let go of the rope defensively here the last 6 or 7 games, and I think that's a problem. They have to take pride on the defensive end. Having Jalen back will help with that, and he's kind of working his way back. Not the same Jalen that we're used to last night. And then when Franz comes back, you got to work him in, and he's one of your best defensive players, if not your best defensive player, right? Certainly for your bigs. So I think that's it. You have to get back to what you were doing defensively. In the 7-game win streak, you were number 1 in defensive rating, right? And in the 6-game losing streak, you're 28th, 29th. Right. So to me, that's it. You have to take pride in that. And even last night against Sacramento, you gave up 117 points to the Sacramento Kings, who are 27th in offensive rating. Right. That can't happen. And with 4 starters out. Right. So they got to find it. And I think, it's much easier to defend when you're coming off a win. Much easier to defend when you're going into Toronto on Sunday in a must-win scenario. If you have any chance of catching them for the 5th seed. I think you're going to see a much better defensive effort starting Sunday and hopefully for the final 9 games.
There was a great quote, Dante, that I want to read you because it was on this magic moment. You said that anybody who thinks Paolo Banchero isn't that guy is an absolute idiot. And I agreed with you 100%.
It was kind of strong, but I feel that.
No, I mean, I agreed with it 100%. And I mean, he's showing everyone that they are absolute idiots. I mean, listen, over the last 3 games, he's scored over 30 points. The discourse, as I told you the last time, was absolutely weird to me when it comes to Paolo Banchero and what he's able to do on a night in, night out basis. But who's ever thinking that he's not the franchise guy or, isn't the sole reason or one of the biggest reasons as to why Orlando is keeping their heads above water right now going into this playoff chase, isn't watching the same game, in my opinion. Just, I want you to take a victory lap on this one, Dante. Just, what have you thought of Paolo Banchero over these last stretch of games and just the second half of the season overall? Because, I mean, he has really been on a tear.
I mean, you got to go back to do it. First of all, I appreciate that. Thank you. And I always love revisiting that and having Paolo's back because I see the work that he put in. That he puts in. I see how competitive he is. I know how much it means to him, and I know how much he wants to win here. And I think it's ridiculous that you have the national perspective that you had, and you had even a lot of people weighing in locally, and even fans, kind of piling on. And it's, it's easy to do that when you're not playing well. And you have to take a step back and realize, what were we before he got here? How much we had struggled for a decade, even a little bit more, before we got that guy, before he showed up on our radar. And now all that. So, and I think we get caught up in this, RJ. And I think it's, then especially from a national perspective is, okay, well, we got to nitpick. We got to find what's wrong with this guy. And we got to have detractors and haters and all that. And he'll be the first one to tell you, it really hit him hard when he didn't get named as an all-star, right? You get Pascal Siakam on the worst team in the Eastern Conference. He gets an all-star, and I think that really hit home. So I think there's a way to do it and say, okay, yeah, there's things we could all do better, and there's areas that we can improve. He'd be the first one to tell you that. It's just his fourth year in the league. He's 23 years old. He knows he's not the finished product. Right. But to come up with this bogus Paolo theory and these ridiculous things that you see on social media, that's going too far. And to me, it shows that he's arrived. And now we're going, he garners that much respect that, he's that big of a name and he's that relevant that you have to, that he garners all this kind of talk. But I just think, I know how valuable he is. And I know every arena we go to. And I know when we talk to coaches and players on air and off air, the first thing they said is Paolo is a problem. That's the first thing they say. Yeah. And every game plan you go into, you have to game plan for Paolo Banchero. And that's double and triple teams. And that's still getting, since January 1st, with all the double and triple teams and without Franz and a lot of times without Jalen and now without Anthony Black, he's getting double and triple teams and he's still putting up the numbers since January 1st that only him and Jokic are doing. Right. So, to me, that is elite company. And that's what we have here in Central Florida, and that's special. Now, we got to get healthy. We got to get back. He's got to have help. You got to knock down shots. You got to rebound. Everybody's got to defend. And, we're asking so much of him. We're asking him to defend. We're asking him to score. When we get back to that 6-game losing streak, that was the point Jake and I made on Magic Insiders is, shame on everyone else if they're not guarding to the absolute best of their capability, because we are asking so much of him and Desmond Bane that if everyone else doesn't elevate their game to match that to me was also kind of where the problem was the last 6. But listen, there could be 99 problems for the Magic, but Paolo ain't one. I mean, this guy has got it all figured out, and he'll get better and better and better. And there's things we got to get better at, but it does not start with Paolo Banchero.
Now, you had also talked with him in the post-game interview that you did, and you always do a great job with those, Mr. Dante, but you talked about the health and you guys needing to get healthy in the final stretch, these final 9 games before getting into the playoffs. And I know that we talk about Anthony Black, but it really feels like people are chomping at the bit and really itching for Franz Wagner to get back. Just how important will it be for Franz to get back sometime within these final 9 games before the playoffs to really get revved up for this team and probably take a lot of that weight off of Paolo Banchero, where he can be another playmaker for himself as well as others on this ball club?
Well, and for Desmond Bane, too. I think it's going to take so much pressure off of both of those guys because now you can't throw as many double teams. Now you can't run Desmond Bane off the line like you have been for the last couple of months. I mean, he garners so much attention. Now, there's going to be some ramp up, and there's going to be some time that he's going to have to get his legs under him and knock off some of that rust. And I don't even know if there'll be a minutes restriction initially, but you'll work through all that. That's why every single game is so important for him to get that under his belt before he comes back. And we're feeling pretty confident he's going to come back before the postseason. So we're hoping at some time, maybe even in the next couple of games, that we'll get him back, because now, to me, it's pretty close to a day-to-day thing because you had him practice down in Osceola. He did some on-court stuff. He felt good yesterday, so that's always a good sign. You had Friday and Saturday to kind of get a little more work in. And then you kind of take it day by day. So it all depends on how he responds to treatment, how he's feeling. But I think there's a sense within the team that it could be close. And then I think you look at Anthony Black. He was back on the court yesterday, not so much doing non-contact stuff, but he's back on the floor. And then, could you possibly even get Jonathan Isaac at some point? So, I mean, now you're going into, if you can find – we haven't had it, so it's hard to imagine. Right. But if you can get to a situation where everybody's available and fully healthy, now your second unit looks like Anthony Black, Tristan Da Silva, Jonathan Isaac, right? Goga Batadze or Mo Wagner, Javon Carter, who you picked up. Now you're talking. Now you got a chance to get this thing rolling a little bit, in addition to what you have with the starting lineup. But you never know. I always joke that I'll get access to the missile launch codes from NORAD before I know the exact day that a player is going to come back, but it feels like it's close, RJ.
Right.
And he just does so much, takes so much pressure off of everybody else, and it's a guy that can get you a big bucket late. He defends his tail off. He rebounds. He's a great passer. He finishes in transition, and one of the league leaders in points in the paint, points in transition. So he means an awful lot to this team.
Couple more for you before we let you go, Mr. Dante, and thanks again as always for giving us a couple moments. Just want to show a little bit of love to Jamal Cain. He gets the standard contract, and he's been playing rather well. I mean, he's getting after it defensively. He's being aggressive on the offensive end when he gets his opportunities out there. Just what have you thought of the play from Jamal Cain? I mean, I know he was on a two-way for the majority of this season, but since he's gotten his standard contract, it really feels like he's making the most of his opportunities.
I'm glad you brought him up. I think it's one of the best stories in the NBA. I really do, RJ. And this is his fourth year in the NBA, and he's always been on a two-way deal. Right, so he had two-way contracts in Miami. He had a two-way deal in New Orleans last year, and he's on a two-way contract this year. So that was 4 years in the making, which he was pretty excited about. And we had him post-game last night, and he said the same thing. He said, "This is just a dream come true." It still hasn't sunk in what's happened. And here's everything you need to know about Jamal. This was his mentality, and he told me on his 27th birthday, right, last week, that's when he got the standard contract, right? His mother came in, his friends, his family, they all came in. They knew it was coming, and they came in to be here to surprise him, right? His agent told him. But the agent didn't tell Jamal. He called Jamal and said, "Hey, Jamal, I just want to let you know, Magic have decided to go a different direction." He goes, we're gonna, but he goes, "But don't worry, I found a team for you in Spain. We'll get you a lot of money." He goes, "It's going to be fine." And Jamal, and he told me, he goes, "I was like, I was hurt. I was like, oh man." I said, "Okay, but bet, let's go over to Spain. Wherever I got to go, I'll go." And that's the kind of mentality, like wherever I'm wanted, wherever I'm needed, I'm going to go and I'm going to give you everything I got. And then he told him, "No, I'm kidding," which is an awful thing to do to the guy.
Right.
But he's playing and then he said, "No, they want you here. They were actually ripping up that two-way, and you got a standard contract." And just the emotions that followed that. But and now he's a part of the rotation. He's played 9 straight games. He's averaging 9 points a game. He had his season high 17 in Cleveland. He got you another 11 last night. He's got double figures in 4 or 5 of those last 9 games. So he's playing well. I mean, he's defending. He's athletic. He's got a couple of putback dunks. He's caught some lobs. He's able to finish, but he can shoot it. But more importantly, he can guard anybody. Like he stays out. He holds his own on the defensive end. DeMar DeRozan was absolutely on fire last night, and you put Cain on him and kind of limited him a little bit in that fourth quarter. So I think he's a versatile guy. So now when everybody comes back, is he a part of the rotation? I'm not sure. But if you need him going into the playoffs or down the stretch, he's showed coach, he's got his respect and he's got his trust. And I think it'd be hard to keep that guy off the floor. That's, as you well know, RJ, and it's the same thing with the 52nd guy on an NFL roster or whatever it may be. You want to make it hard on the coach to keep you off the court or off the field. And that's what he's done. And he's done his job there. And he's been if whatever seed they get or wherever they finish, it's going to be because in part of the contributions that he made.
Now, final 9 games of the regular season for the Orlando Magic. We're talking about health, everybody getting back. That'll play a huge factor in the Orlando Magic in terms of seeding. You told us before we started recording, listen, you only needed to get 1, and that may start a string of maybe another winning streak. I mean, I look at the final 9 games, Dante. It's not that it's murderer's row here, but the Magic do need to be able to take care of business. That'll start on Sunday against the Toronto Raptors. Just kind of your keys for Orlando in the game against Toronto and just their keys to have a successful final 9 games of the regular season heading into the playoffs.
Well, I just got to take it one game at a time, and first up is the Raptors, and I think you got to commit to the defensive end. You got to limit the opposing backcourts and guards dribble penetration, getting in the paint. You got to keep teams out of the paint. You got to rebound. We were one of the better defensive rebounding teams the first half of the season. That's kind of gotten away from us. A lot of teams are getting second chance opportunities. We haven't gotten back as much as we should, so we're getting beat in the transition game. That's something that can't happen. Got to find a way to force more turnovers without fouling. We did a good job last night of not sending Sacramento to the line. Just 16 free throw attempts, and the Magic had 32. You got to continue to share the basketball. You had a big offensive night, but you only had 22 assists. Sacramento had 30 assists last night. So we got to move the basketball a little bit better. Continue to work in these guys. And I think at some point you just got to look in the mirror and say, we got 9 games. We got to play them. Let's go all in. We could finish anywhere from 10-5 here in this thing. At one point, 4 was realistic. You got within 1 game of the Cleveland Cavaliers. I always felt one of those top 4 teams probably wasn't going to fall out of there. And it looks like that's probably going to hold true. But if you can get up to 5, if you can force a matchup with Cleveland, or even if you have to go the play-in route, let's say you get in and you're the 8th seed and you draw Detroit. Nobody wants to play Detroit, but if Cade Cunningham isn't back or isn't right, and that's devastating what happened. And first and foremost, we wish him good health and we want him back. But if that ends up being a favorable matchup, the Knicks haven't proven anything. They haven't gotten to an NBA Finals with this group. So I think I don't think you want anything to do with Boston. I think if you go there, you give it your best, and who knows, anything can happen. Certainly, in Cleveland, we took to 7 games a couple of years ago. So I think when you get in, you're going to compete with whoever you get, and I think that's important for everyone to realize. But until then, it's 1 game at a time. You try to get some help along the way, win the game that's in front of you, and you're right. It is. None of these games are easy. But these are all winnable games for this Magic team. A back-to-back, when you're a road home back-to-back, when you got OKC waiting for you in your building is not desirable. Going to Cleveland on a back-to-back is probably not the best. A rested Laker team waiting for you. So there's a lot of things. They had a lot of challenges up to this point. But these are all winnable games here down the stretch. And if you approach it with the right mentality, this team can beat anybody. We've seen that all year, RJ.
There is nobody on this planet, let's just be clear, that can get me more excited about the Orlando Magic and the final 9 games of their season.
There we go.
One Dante Marchitelli. I'm saying we're going 9-0. You heard it here first on this Magic moment. We're getting the 5. All right, we're taking all comers. Dante Marchitelli, host and analyst for the Orlando Magic.
Play that back so you can get your flowers. We're going to give you your flowers once we go 9-0.
Dante Marchitelli is host and sideline reporter for the Orlando Magic. Also listen to him and Jake Chapman on Magic Insiders on 96.9 The Game in Orlando. Dante, once again, man, thank you so much for giving us a couple moments, man. And we'll do this sometime before the playoffs and preview that playoff matchups, sir. Thank you.
Anytime. Always great to talk to you, RJ. Keep up the great work. I love this Magic moment. I love chatting with you, and I love the video aspect that you've added to it now, and I love everything you guys do at 1010XL in Jacksonville. So let's finish strong the last 9, and let's have a postseason run. This will be a lot of fun, and we're craving it here in Central Florida. So good to talk to you, and we'll do it again soon.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it. A big thank you to Dante Marchitelli, Orlando Magic, a sideline reporter as well as analyst that you hear on the FanDuel Sports Network during the Orlando Magic games, giving a lot of great insight. Also very optimistic that we are going to be seeing Franz Wagner here before the season is said and done. Going to have to take it 1 game at a time, like he said. But as I talked about to open up this show, there has to be a lot of key focuses for this team. I think they understand that. I also think that Jamal Mosley understands that, and his coaching staff does as well. Next week, we probably will be getting into playoff seeding, where you may want to feel the most confident at the teams in which you'll say, listen, I think we can take them and push them to 5, 6, or maybe even 7 games, maybe even potentially win our first round playoff series. Also want to get into this interesting tweet in which I saw before we even hit the record button here about the Orlando Magic are quote unquote very active in trying to figure out the asking price for one Giannis Antetokounmpo from the Milwaukee Bucks and possibly having him in an Orlando Magic uniform next season. Now, I understand that those are rumors. I did have Kurt Heelan on our show Open Gym on Sundays. He did believe that, if Orlando is wondering whether or not this is going to work out, the duo of Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner, would they potentially say that we keep one and we let the other one go, yet we try to bring in another star? I don't believe, just in the here and now as I'm speaking to you guys, that that's going to be an option for the Orlando Magic. I just don't think Jeff Weltman is that kind of a guy who wants to really disband his core in which he has placed through the NBA draft and getting those guys such as Jalen Suggs, Franz Wagner, Paolo Banchero, especially he's not going to give up Desmond Bane after all he gave up to acquire him. But I do believe that also Anthony Black as well, I should throw him in there too. I don't believe that he wants to give those guys up, but maybe for the right price, we could be having a different conversation. But I did find that very interesting. We will get into that next week. Right now, the focus needs to be for the Magic going to Toronto, getting a big win in Canada. If they are able to do that, if they can accomplish that, I do believe that they put themselves in very good standing to close out the season strong. I understand that in the final 9 games, you will have games against teams such as Detroit. That's going to be without Cade Cunningham. We do wish Cade Cunningham, like Dante Marchitelli said, all the best. Hopefully he's able to have a speedy recovery and be able to be back on the floor for his team. You're also going to have to end your season against a tough Boston Celtics team, a team that you may face in the first round of the Eastern Conference playoffs. You'll also be facing the Minnesota Timberwolves, a team in which I think is going to want to get their get back as well. But also remember, you do have Atlanta, in which they're going to want to face you as well and really keep their presence in the top 6 seeds in the Eastern Conference playoffs. So not murderer's row here, but you do have tough games. But these are games I do feel that the Orlando Magic can win. These aren't games in which they should lay down. This is not a bad team. This is a team that is very much better than what their record would indicate. They've just been dealt a hand of bad luck, especially with the injuries, but hopefully that's able to turn around if you are able to get Franz Wagner and Anthony Black back into the lineup. That is going to do it for us here on this Magic Moment. Please like and subscribe to the channel. We appreciate you guys, as always, being along for the ride here with us. Big thank you to Thomas Kelly for always giving you guys great footage and always giving you guys this Magic Moment on YouTube as we do every Friday. So for Thomas Kelly and Dante Marchitelli, I'm RJ Saunders, and this has been This Magic Moment. We will talk to you next week. Go Magic.